Thanks for being with us today on the Healthcare Leadership Excellence Podcast. I don't think I have too many consulting engagements where people don't talk about um, we need to communicate better. And everyone around the table nods and everyone leaves without the slightest idea of what that actually meant. And they go back to their habits. By the end of our meeting today, we will not have that problem because we are talking to someone, author of the book Speaking to Influence, Dr. Laura Sicola. Welcome to our program.
Carl, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
So just tell us a little bit about your path that leads you to be working with us today.
Carl, I've been in the education space for multiple decades. Let's put it that way. I don't need to go any further on that. I am, by training, by degree, I'm a cognitive linguist. So what does that mean? It means that I look at what it is about what you say and how you say it that makes your message either go in one ear and come out the other for the other person, or go in there and ideally stick. And if it sticks, does it rattle around and do what you want it to do? Or does it have some other mutation along the way that makes you go, how did you get that from what I said? So my job in taking all of that and putting it into the executive coaching, leadership communication, influence training, all that kind of fun space is, I think, pretty obvious. But it's how to make sure that that doesn't happen as much so that people can see you as the complete leader, not just the technical expert that you need to be able to make sure that you're able to translate that genius, that vision, that passion, that vision, that expertise, and get everybody on board rowing in the same direction to get the results that you want.
So I don't want to be pushy here with our audience, but I know that many of you listen while you're driving. You listen while you're on the exercise bike or on the treadmill. So welcome. We're glad to have you. I do want to suggest that this is going to be an episode you're going to want to listen to again, because we're going to dig in on some items that absolutely are takeaways that you can use today when you get to work. And as I interviewed Dr. Sicola in our pre-call, no nonsense, cut to the chase, let's get it done. So let's dig in on one of my first questions here. What needs, and let's preface it with one of my favorite quotes, and I paraphrase it. The biggest single concern with communication is the illusion that it has occurred.
Mm.
And how many times have I heard someone say, well, we sent out the email, or well, and in the healthcare realm, most hospitals have huddles various times a day. And the morning huddle, usually right after shift change, they work 7 to 7. So people are either zonked after a night of no sleep, or Starbucks hasn't kicked in yet. And so they're halfway there mentally. And I've been in so many huddles, doctor, that the message is not getting through.
Mm-hmm.
You can see it in their face, yet the person is reading off her clipboard, droning on. So what has to happen so that that nurse or Carl, when he's talking, walks away thinking it's not just rattling around? Talk to us on that.
Oh my gosh, there's so much packed in there. I love the quote about the biggest concern in communication is that it has occurred. I'll match you quote for quote on that, that what you successfully communicate is what they hear,
Oh,
regardless of what you intended to communicate. What they hear is what you communicated, intentionally or otherwise. So there's, of course, being mindful of some of the factors that influence what gets transmitted, I think is really stage one. Are you talking at the beginning of the shift or the end of a shift, especially a 12-hour shift? Okay, be mindful. Maybe you can't blow quite as fast through things. Maybe you need to up the energy a little bit. Maybe you need to check in with the people and say, your face indicates that you've had a little heavier of a shift than you usually do. Are you okay? Do you need to go to the bathroom first? And I realize everybody's shifts, everybody's got exactly 9 minutes to get this out, or you've got to get on your rounds, or you've got to do whatever else. You still need to check in. Because if people aren't in a position to be able to hear what you said, then you don't get any bingo points for just saying everything you wanted to say if nothing lands. There's no bingo points for finishing the sentence.
So I want to jump in here, and I know I dumped a whole ton of on you with that first question or multiple questions, but you said something here. Well, we have 9 minutes to communicate this. And so they turn on the fire hose, and I love, what they hear is what you communicated. How do you push back on, whoa, 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 whoa? What's more important, your 9 minutes or what really needs to be communicated? How do you handle that? We only have a short time, and usually the time is arbitrary. How do you
Mm.
handle that?
I think for each situation, and I will begin, of course, as I will begin many answers, which is with what I call the most annoying teacher answer ever, which is it depends. And that's something that really, I say it somewhat tongue in cheek, a little glibly, but in reality, Carl, you do have to take stock of each individual situation itself because there are always slightly differing circumstances, and depending on which side of the proverb you like, either God is in the details, the devil is in the details, or both. But it sort of is really a question of whether or not you've acknowledged the details of the situation as to whether it's God or the devil who's going to show up in that conversation. So yes, you do need to think about those, and the nature of the message, the length or number of messages, and or the amount of time, whatever is your default or preference may not necessarily work together for a particular situation. So decide which one's got to give. If you only have 9 minutes and that's not negotiable today, you can't get through 12 items on your agenda.
Mhm.
Figure something else out. What's your priority and figure out how to get the others across, or decide they don't need to be conveyed this time.
So do some coaching here for some of our listeners, because what you said here, we could spend the whole time on. Um, but Carl, I'll push it to you. But Dr. Sicola, we have 10 minutes and they're 9 priorities. We have to go over all of them. In the multiple talks you've given, and what would you say to Carl, who has just told you that, of you can't do that? How do you get that message across to your people?
If you don't have time to do something right, when will you have time to do it over?
Can you say that again?
Gladly. If you don't have time to do it right, when will you have time to do it over?
To our listeners, just a standing ovation on that one. We could end the podcast right now, and that piece of gold. Think about it. You will always be forced to do it over if you don't do
Yes.
it right the first time.
And it will take you longer because now you have a mess to clean up, not just a blank to fill in.
Excellent. So now that I've taken you on 10 tangents, getting back to the what needs to happen to get the message through, what they hear is what you've communicated.
Hmm.
I promise to be quiet for at least a minute.
Not at all. Jump in, jump in. Like I'm a Jersey Italian. Interruption is part of our genetic makeup. So feel free.
Okay. So, you talked in our pre-call about the expert's curse.
Mm.
Tell us more about that.
The expert's curse is a fun condition that most of us experience. And I'm guessing if you're listening to this podcast, you are right there in the mix with the rest of us, which is that you've spent most of your life gaining incredible expertise in your niche area to the point where everything is connected to everything else. Everything is obvious in its logic and value. And we forget what's not obvious, not intuitive, not in the realm of understanding, or not necessary or interesting to
Mhm.
anybody else that we might be talking to. So it's really about taking a step back and saying, who is the person that I'm talking to? What is it that, what's the essence of what I need them to understand and why? How do I convey the why to them, preferably in the why they need to understand it for themselves, not just why I want them or claim that I need them to
Mhm.
understand it? And then how do we digest it in a way, or distill it, I should say, in a way that makes it as simply digestible to them as possible. And there's a number of basic tactics you can use to do that, but most of it stems from just conscious awareness and not flying on autopilot and talking to yourself while they're in the room.
Okay, so this is another repeat. Listeners, what did she just say? Talking to yourself while they're in the room. Did I get that right?
You most certainly did.
Okay. What do you mean by that? Because that's gold. Dig in.
Talking to yourself while someone's in the room, as opposed to talking to the other person who is there with you, is about how is the message framed in a way that will meet their needs, their professional needs, their cognitive needs, their informational needs, their personal preferences, etc. It is, if I'm talking to, if you're a surgeon and you're talking to a patient's family, you can't just launch into all the surgical jargon in the way that is the most, yes, perhaps technically accurate, concise, and precise, but where 90% of it to them sounded like it came from Charlie Brown's teacher. You know what I mean by that, Carl?
Mer, mer, mer. Yep.
Yes, exactly. Wah, 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 wah. They
I
might
love
understand their name in the middle, but that's about it. So
it.
you have conveyed nothing. You have spoken to yourself in that you assume that they have your complete and total frame of reference, and thus they are your intellectual and professional clone, which they're not. So you end up really just talking to yourself because nobody else understands what they're saying,
Oh,
which is
that is perfect. Um, let's say that, talk to me here as if I'm your client. I have a real habit
I'll
of
send you the bill. Oh, I'm not supposed to send you that one. Sorry.
if it's good enough, I'll pay. Um, so I have this habit of talking to myself in the room
Mm.
while you're in the room. Um, because what you said is so right on target. Um, how do I break that habit? Because it goes deep. I've been doing this for decades. How do I break that habit?
I think it starts first and foremost with distinguishing between things like um, simplifying versus dumbing down. They are not the same thing. Dumbing down means condescending, assuming that they're stupid, that there is an evaluation of the person and of the person's worth.
Mhm,
That person might be a bloody genius. They could be a rocket scientist. It just doesn't mean, it just means that they don't happen to have your technical expertise in this field. I mean, I'm a doctor, you're a doctor, we're just doctors of very different things. So
mhm,
it's a question of, okay, are we taking the SAT's math section or the SAT's language section? We may score slightly differently on them, but it's not about lesser human value or lesser intellect. So how do you take this, the information that you need them to understand, and otherwise help get it into the most fundamental, here's what you need to know terms. There's a, I find younger professionals and people who are perhaps newer in their roles, even if it's a more senior role, where there's still a little bit of imposter syndrome, still a little bit of an I need to prove myself insecurity, may feel like they need to use more big technical terms to sound smarter. Consciously or unconsciously, there's that default. Sometimes people will slide into using more technical terms to avoid questions. They're actively trying to snow the other person. Just feel like, just trust me that I know what I'm talking about. That's all I need you to know is that I'm smart. Don't ask questions. Just do what I'm telling you to do. I'm out of my 90 seconds with you. I got to move on. So really, how do you make sure that your goal is that the other person feels smart?
mhm.
That's very different from the other person recognizing then that you are smart. That's how you start, by creating that connection and actively, successfully communicating meeting.
So I don't want to take us too far down the path of using good communications to resolve conflict, but
Mm.
I think that's a huge area. So just want to run a scenario by you.
Yes.
Um, an executive that I work with
Mhm,
he's at C-suite. He's got someone below him, one or two
mhm,
years down, who's very defensive, somewhat
mm,
insecure,
mm,
does really good work, but leaves a trail of devastation behind.
lovely.
His question was, and I just love your input on this, how do I get my point across with a defensive person who always has lots of reasons why she did something, none of them really good?
Mm.
How do I get my message across to someone who is highly defensive? And again, I'll say it for you. It depends. But now that that's
Very good. It only took 1 round and you got that message through. That's great. Uh, the so let me just ask one clarifying question. It sounds like your, executive clients the kind of message that he's looking to convey to that direct report is corrective feedback, constructive feedback of some sort. So there was an error, there it was an oversight of some sort, um,
multiple and historical.
multiple and historical. Okay. And so this is where, as a coach, I am likely to ask that person quite a number of questions, frankly, before giving advice, because that's what fills in the blanks of it depends
Mhm,
on what, right? So in the past, when this when such corrective feedback, constructive feedback has been given, what's the nature of the problems? What has been how has the correction been given in the past? Has it been done in public? Has it been done in private? Has it been done via email? Has it been done face to face? Has it come across as um, what are you trying to get me fired by giving me this kind of junk versus hey, can I ask you a question about something? Help me understand.
mhm.
So all of these details we condition people, we train people on how to treat us. So I would be curious to know, how long they've been working together, who else this person reports to, and where did that conditioning to be super defensive come from?
Mhm.
And what's been threatened in the past when there have been those kinds of errors? So, a lot of those are the conditions that we need to look into to say, gee, what could have caused this and what would be necessary to create the psychological safety for this person to be better able to receive constructive feedback without feeling like her neck might be on the chopping block at any moment. So she's got to deny and defend to make sure that her job is secure, if nothing else.
Excellent. Thank you. Good ideas there. I want to go into one thing you said. Um, Amy Edmondson out of Harvard
Mhm,
wrote a book on well, she's kind of the expert on emotionally safe work environments.
mhm,
And a few months back, she came out with a clarifying article in HBR saying that some of her materials had been taken a little out of context. So the my question is, I don't think anyone disputes, doctor, that we need to have psychologically safe environments to truly share.
mhm,
What I've seen, however, is people hiding under the guise of emotional safety.
mm,
And truly, it's just been Dr. Jones, who's a national class neurosurgeon, said in a very pointed way, not in an attacking way, we need to do better at this.
mhm,
Well, the person they heard, they felt it was an attack. As an expert on good communication, how can we help people? And with the questions you just asked, as a clarification, how can we help people successfully engage in dialogue and interchange without having to couch things to avoid offense to almost a ludicrous degree?
mm.
Thoughts on that?
Sure. There's a number of things that we can do. One of which is after, uh, first of all, asking people how they like to receive input. Some people need to process things before they respond, so they'd prefer to receive it if there's any corrections by email so that they have a chance to decide how to respond, where they know if it happens to them in person, they're going to flush, they're going to stammer a little bit, they aren't good at coming up with a response quickly. So that might be easy. Others are like, nah, just say it to me. That's a different ballgame. Okay, so mode, timing, etc. Um, Others, once you have that conversation, if you see that the immediate response is something that is defensive, to just pause for a second and acknowledge that energy and say, I hear your response, and it's maybe my imagination, but it seems like you're feeling a little defensive. Have I said something that's made you feel that, or am I misinterpreting? Not like, why are you being so defensive? That's different, right? So it seems like, or it sounds like I may have put you, or made you feel uncomfortable with this, or that you're feeling X. Let the person then say, well, yes, because, or no, that's not it, but okay, well, what is it? Get them to talk about it and
Got it.
see what they share.
So we spent the first few minutes of the podcast on communication. I'm going to switch us out of that lane entirely,
Okay.
although the next questions tie to it, I imagine. One thing I was really excited about in our pre-call and doing some background on what you do. First, let's go to executive presence.
Hmm.
I think of someone that was referred to me years back, and their referring CEO said, "She's brilliant. I can't put my finger on it, though. She just doesn't have the presence we need." So, great, could you be more vague? Um, how can you drill down for us on this whole idea of executive presence, why it's important, how to work on it? Just talk to us about this incredibly important area.
Sure. And it is something that can be a bit nebulous, that people tend to refer to as the X factor, the it factor, leadership presence, executive presence, command presence, I think is the term they use in the military. It's all the same thing. But what it is being able to exude a particular energy that makes people trust you as a leader that they can confidently follow.
Love
And
that definition.
so what does that look like? Of course, how do we operationalize that? How do we break it down? And most importantly, in order to develop it, because it's not just a matter of, well, you're born with it or you're not. That's a load of horse hockey. So there's many studies out there that have broken it down into multiple pillars, as it were. Communication is at the heart of all of it, no matter what anyone tells you or what else they're describing. Um, But to me, ultimately, it breaks down to the three C's. And it's the ability to command the room, connect with the audience, and close the deal. And I'll define those. So the first C is to command the room. That's where, from the minute you walk in or click join meeting, there's something about your presence, perhaps even before you start to talk, that says, that compels the audience to pay attention, to attend. And as you start to talk, you're able to maintain that nature that says that holds their attention to it. Um, the second C is connecting with the audience. No matter what your role, whether you're the intern from the mailroom or the CEO or the physician or the patient or whoever it is, that you are able to establish on some level with the other person that you understand me and I understand you. And it's on that one thread that we're going to move forward, if nothing else. But we have found that connection. And then the third C is closing the deal. Now, this does not necessarily mean signing on the dotted line, transacting a sale of some sort. It might, but that's certainly the exception rather than the rule. Closing the deal means getting to yes, coming to a mutual understanding, a mutually acceptable result, coming to an answer, maybe coming to a decision that has been in the works for a long time, deciding together on what's the next step. How do we move forward? And sometimes they're very micro distinctions from time to time. You could be in the middle of a negotiation that it's going to last 8 months working through this. So each conversation that you have one more objective, one more little notch to move the needle forward. And that's fine. But can you do that together? The negotiation skills, the listening skills, all of those pieces are part of being able to close the deal.
So, what can our listeners do? Because you mentioned something here that this is not a born with trait.
Not
This is,
necessarily, no.
this is something that can be developed.
It has to be.
If I'm that new leader and I'm a little concerned about my executive presence, any tangible, not little, I don't want tips necessarily.
Mhm.
Where can Carl start to learn this? What can I do almost as a training regimen? What can I do?
I'm going to challenge your listeners to do two things. First, when you think about your brand, your executive presence, the reputation that you would like to have with ideally everyone, but that particular audience, whoever it is that makes you a little nervous, perhaps, or not nervous for that matter. If you were to write down three personal characteristics that are your priority, that you need to know people perceive in you, they recognize you're confident, you're empathetic, beyond the intellectual parts of expert,
Mm,
knowledgeable, smart, all those synonyms. Let's put that aside. Let's assume that's a given. They
mm,
need to understand that you are technically good. But the confidence, the empathy, the passion, the compassion, whatever else you want to list, pick
mm.
three. And then, these are all subjective interpretations of your behaviors, the way that you communicate. 'Cause I can say to you, Carl, hi, I'm Laura Sicola. I just want you to know that I'm confident and efficient and empathetic. And you're going to be like, uh-huh, sure, I'll be the judge of that. But thank you for playing. So, and that's the thing, you'll be the judge. It is a judgment because what seems confident to one may seem too humble to another or may seem arrogant to a third. So, it is the evaluation that you have. So, once you've made that list, it's about how you want to be perceived. Then, next time you're on a Zoom meeting, Teams meeting, whatever platform you have, take your phone, open up your video camera, prop it up against your screen, and just, you don't have to record the whole thing, but maybe 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes of when you're leading a conversation or discussion about something. Just record those couple of minutes. And then later, go back and watch the video and ask yourself one question. And that question is, if I didn't know that person from Adam or Eve, would I, upon watching those 3 minutes, say that person was, yes, confident? Two, yes, empathetic. Three, yes, approachable, relatable, whatever the third one was. Yes or no. And here's the thing, if it's a sort of, that's a no.
That is pure gold. Wow, what an excellent idea. Um, a subset of this, and we hit this on the pre-call, the phenomenal double standard there is between
Mm.
male executive presence and female executive presence. What is confident and strong for one is arrogant and pushy for the other. Thoughts on for our listeners, both male and female, but specifically female on this one, developing executive presence that doesn't sell you out in a very duplicious world and that doesn't overwhelm a personality.
Huh, that's a big one. And, the funny thing to me is that, yes, there's a double standard as far as, so think of it this way. I like to say that often, and I don't make a whole lot of gender based generalizations, but we're going to play with this one for just a moment. That I think men and women are socialized to communicate differently in the business space. And if you think about it, men are generally socialized to play communication football. You've got a good like 80 yards worth of space where you can zigzag all over the place. And as long as you're still carrying the ball, it's valid. You have to go pretty darn close, if not ultimately into the end zones, before you're at the extreme enough to be considered a colossal jerk or a colossal wimp. One or the other. Everything else in between is just kind of like,
Oh,
well,
love
he's
it.
a developing leader. He's a strong leader. It's good enough.
Mhm.
And we'll kind of let most of the rest of it slide. Women who are frustrated in this space frequently feel like they've been socialized to be gymnasts, and their event is the beam, that they've got a 4-inch plank, 4-inch wide plank to walk across. And if they teeter too far over to one side, then they are the doormat. They're not heard. They're too soft. And if they teeter too far to the other side, they are the witch in the boardroom with a B instead of a W. So, what I often hear from women is, well, I have a reputation for being too strong, too intimidating, too aggressive, to whatever else. I've tried being nice and that didn't work. So, what am I supposed to do? And one of the first things that we all have to do, men, women, or otherwise, is to be very careful of establishing self-limiting determinations with absolute language, the black or white language, insofar as, well, black, I tried being nice, it didn't work, so white, and I'm not, this is not racially based, just, distinguishing poles. I tried being nice and it didn't work, so what am I supposed to do? Therefore, I gotta be strong if I'm going to be effective. And it's not a binary choice. It is not. So think of it this way. Inside everybody's brain, you have the equivalent of a DJ's mixing board. Have you ever looked at the mixing board that the sound engineers use?
Yeah.
Levers and dials all over the place. We just are only typically aware of the power switch on or off and probably the volume button. Beyond that, we have no idea what any of those other levers do. But recognize, as you learn to identify what those levers are, there are so many ways that you can modify certain things, certain details, your tone of voice, some turns of phrase, pacing. There's a million of them. And just by switching one or two, there we go. That's just like that. Look at that. My video camera decided to zoom in right there on me. It's illustrating my point perfectly. So, but by just shifting little details, maybe shifting one from a 5 to a 7, not on or off, 5 to 7, might just click it into place. Because the details really are in, or I should say, the changes are in the nuances. That's where the effect is. And that's what we want to learn to master at those senior most levels because of the sensitivity and the importance of what you're communicating. It's not just yes or no, typically.
So for our final minutes here, I want us to focus in on one thing that I was really enthused about also. Um, Branding.
Hmm.
We're talking to medical professionals mostly in this podcast.
Hmm.
Almost never think of themselves as a brand. They take care of patients, they save lives, they take people out of the stress of cancer. They're amazing. And
Yes.
so when I tell them about their brand, like we joked about, this is not an end cap with Procter and Gamble and soap. So talk to us about, we talked about communication, executive presence, and the center part of communication in that aspect.
Mhm.
What about branding for professional level people?
Branding, I think my favorite definition of a brand is that a brand is a promise of an experience and the experience of a promise consistently delivered.
Oh, that's a repeat. Go at it.
Okay. So I will say it again. A brand is the promise of an experience and the experience of a promise consistently delivered. So there's a lot of people who are technical experts and medical practice, surgery, and whatnot. There's a lot of technical expertise involved there. But whether it's that or finance or IT or you name it, the feeling like, well, as long as I'm an expert in my craft, my work should speak for itself. And the good news and the bad news is that you're right. Your work does speak for itself, but it doesn't speak for you. It may say how good you are as a surgeon. It does not say how good you are as a leader. And if you are hemorrhaging people off of your team because while your patients may think that you're wonderful in the OR, everybody else thinks you're toxic and they would rather cut off a leg themselves than have to keep working for you, that's not effective. We're missing something. Of course, I'm being a little melodramatic in my analogy here, but what is the experience that they are consistently dealing with? And is it what they want? You can promise that you are this kind of leader, this kind of expert, but is that what they are truly consistently having delivered to them? So when you think about that, okay, how are you at your as a leader, as a technical expert, as a colleague, as a um, thought leader in your space? You need to think about all of those relative brands and how they gel. How do you want to be known? That's your
Excellent.
brand.
So as we end up, um, and I won't put this on our listeners, if I just listen to this podcast, I would definitely want to know how to find out more about what you do. This has been amazing. Tell us how we can get in contact with Dr. Sicola and learn more about what you bring to the table.
Thank you so much for that. It is the easiest thing to do is simply to go to my website, which is laurasicola.com. I assume you put that in the show notes. People can take a look there. You can also take a look at come to my LinkedIn page and connect with me there. But by all means, let me know that you heard us talking here on the podcast.
Thank you so much for so much time during our recording today. Very appreciated.
It was my pleasure. Thank you so much for the invitation, Carl.
And to our listeners, as always, thank you for giving us your valuable time today.